Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Andrea Jackson. As mentioned, I am a doctoral candidate graduating in May. So I'm very excited about that. And I just want to extend my thanks to Dr. Ponton for inviting me into this space. I was a random person that emailed him one day and he kind of took me under his wing. So I appreciate you all opening your doors for me as well. I will be sharing with you a bit of my dissertation research that I am currently working on. It is not fully fleshed out as yet. I'm currently working through in vivo, trying to finish my qualitative analysis. Don't know how to use the program, so I'm working my way through it. But I do have some emerging themes that I would like to kind of discuss with you about my topic. So I am working on Black, Queer, and Educated, the lived experiences of Black public K-12 teachers. In this study, I am comparing the lived experiences between Black queer teachers and Black cisgender heterosexual teachers in public K-12 schools. We need to question old myths that still have us valuing some types of people over others, and old habits of scapegoating some for complex social problems. We also need to learn more together about people's real lives, struggles, hard work, contributions, and hopes. Pollock, 2017. Black, queer, and Black heterosexual teachers' voices are more critical than ever. While my research highlights the differing experiences, today's political climate under a second Trump administration threatens all marginalized groups as Project 2025 aims to reshape U.S. government. Inspired by local and national efforts to silence Black and queer voices like the Stop Woke Act and anti-gay legislation, my work ensures that these teachers' stories are heard and their voices are amplified. In this study, Black will be used synonymously with Mitchell's 2023 definition for African American, emphasizing the ethnicity, nationality, and culture of US-born Black people who identify with the Black American struggle and relate to the long-lasting effects of slavery and the consequent American caste system. Queer is defined as a widely used catch-all term in the queer community, in the LGBTQ community. It can describe someone's sexuality or non-conforming gender identity. Or it can be used to reject labels and binaries, male and female, altogether. Cisgender is defined as a person whose gender identity and assigned sex coincide, and heterosexual is defined as a person who is sexually attracted to a person of a different gender or sex. In US public schools, the teacher prototype remains a heterosexual white woman, with 77% of teachers being female and 80% white, according to the National Center for Education Statistics in 2023. That same report indicated that 15% of the population is made up of Black students, yet only 6% of teachers are Black, while Hispanic students comprise 28% of the population, which is 9% Hispanic teachers. This pattern holds across other racial and ethnic groups, leaving minority students with few teachers who reflect their identities. Existing literature on the experiences of Black queer teachers indicates that there is a need for more research in this area. Scholars in the field agree on the lack of representation in literature, including Brockenbrough, who in 2012 stressed the absence of Black queers from the research literatures on Black teachers and queer teachers leaves important questions unanswered regarding their participation in the teaching profession. As a direct result of this gap in knowledge, this study aims to answer the following research questions. What are the lived experiences of Black queer teachers in K-12 public schools? And two, what are the differences in those experiences as a Black heterosexual teacher in comparison to being a Black heterosexual or queer teacher in K-12 public schools? This study is rooted in two theoretical frameworks: queer theory, coined by De Laurentiis in 91, and performative theory developed by Foucault in 76. However, it was further refined by Butler around 97. The former challenges heteronormativity, while the latter explores the negotiation of identity. Both theories find commonality, however, in the idea that gender and sexual identity and what's deemed as normal or deviant are all social constructs. Yet, sexual identity in the workplace proves to add an additional layer of complexity. Implementing a qualitative methodology, I interviewed 20 Black public school teachers, 9 of which identified as queer. The remaining 11 were cisgender, heterosexual, and 1 had to be tossed out because they did not meet the participant requirements. So that one, we're left with 19. Each teacher also provided 2 journal entries, further detailing their experiences as a Black teacher and artifacts, if available, to further support their story. As I work through analysis, I will reference an outline devised by Griffin in 92 to understand the ways in which queer teachers negotiate their identities in the workplace under performative theory. 4 levels of negotiation exist, which are as follows. Passing. The individual lies in order to be seen as heterosexual. Covering. Not disclosing information. Being implicitly out, using explicit language and artifacts to indicate sexual orientation, and affirming identity, encouraging others to view him or her as gay. Anticipated a priori themes of my study include over-policing, macro and microaggressions, tokenism, assimilation into the dominant culture, stereotyping and tropes, and challenges shattering the glass ceiling by marginalized populations. Of those 19 usable interviews, 6 baseline themes have kind of begun to emerge. Those include 1, the normalization of existence. 2, accepting queerness before Blackness. 3, the angry Black person. 4, Blackness as a classroom management tool. 5, amplify my truth. And 6, comfort as resistance. It is important to note that as I go through this study, pseudonyms are being used when discussing findings to protect the identity and the integrity of research participants. Normalization of existence. Initial analysis of interviews reveals that there is apparent need for normalization, and society's perceived views of what's normal shape our existence and our experiences in the workplace. This is especially true for Black teachers. Take Langston Baldwin, for instance. He is a Black gay teacher who intentionally steps into positions of governance in spaces traditionally not designed for him. He reflected, I know I'm going in a space where I may be seen as a threat or out of place, but I think in order for us to move into normalcy, we will have to. We can't hide. You know, we have to go. We have to act as if this is and we are commonplace. Marlena Williams, on the other hand, is a Black heterosexual teacher, and she is aware that the treatment she receives is simply average, attributing her treatment to her sexuality, something that she understands others may not experience. She stated, I don't know what the right word is, But because I'm a cisgender heterosexual, I conform to what society considers the norm. I really feel like that's the wrong word because I feel like the norm is what you believe to be true about yourself and not like a statistic or anything. But I think because I'm married to a man, that I'm just treated average, like the same, accepting queerness before blackness. Authenticity prevailed as a powerful conversation piece amongst research participants. The question, can you be your authentic self at work, drew striking responses. Yet, one that stands out the most came from Langston, we heard from him earlier, who recognized the way he is received at work is dependent upon who is in the room and brought about many facets of intersectionality, including race, sexuality, disability, class, and education. When it comes to my queerness or my gayness, I believe society is okay with that. Or in my work setting, that is okay. But when it comes to my blackness, that's where the politics of, depending on who's in the room and who's a part of the audience, there's a pandering to, do I feel like going toe to toe with you today about I have just as much education? So I think that's something that I constantly have to protect. I don't feel like I have to protect my gayness or my queerness because people are less likely to outwardly attack that part because it's maybe HR related, you know? But microaggressions, when it comes to blackness and class, those are things that are deep. And that's where I think being a double or triple minority is sometimes taxing because it's like, you'll accept me being gay, and they'll kind of write that off. But when you're black or have a disability, those are things that society, I think, is less forgiving of. The angry black person. Irrespective of sexuality, black people and black women in particular still find themselves at the helm of the angry black woman trope. When taking public school systems into consideration, interviews revealed that teaching methods were more harshly criticized than those of their white teammates, and teachers were unable to raise their voice in the classroom, regardless of if the raised voice was out of excitement or discipline. Melissa Ann, a naturally excited teacher, shared her experience with volume management, noting that despite her evaluations being effective, she routinely loses points in the classroom environment domain and its subsequent effects on her self-esteem. She shared, I think that when I raise my voice, I come off as an angry black lady. And I think that when he raises his voice, he's just a white man raising his voice. It's not scary. When Kelly Baker, a black heterosexual teacher, experienced a microaggression at work, she discussed the situation with her therapist, whom she described as a person of color but not black, and talked through possible ways to address this harmful interaction. The therapist sided with Kelly, confirming that the intuitive response Kelly wanted to give would have been appropriate. Yet Kelly shared her struggle. I think in situations like that where it's like, yeah, an appropriate response to X is Y, but because I'm a black woman and all of the tropes and things that exist, I can't handle the situation the way it deserves to be handled. Because then again, I'm a problem. I think that's another reason why I don't show up as my full self or my full identity or my full self at work, just out of self-protection. Blackness as a classroom management tool. Race serves as a catalyst in participants' work-related experiences, as well as feelings of administrative support, isolation, and marginalization. Julius Shacklebolt, a Black gay teacher, shared his experiences being scheduled challenging classes. When asked if he thought the cause was due to his Blackness or his maleness, he cited both for he and his co-teacher's experience. Sometimes they schedule kids in my classroom because they know that I can handle those behaviors, I guess. When I co-taught with another Black male, we had the toughest class of my career, and I knew that was intentional. They're like, if anyone can handle this group, it's them, and we cannot. Amplify my truth. When asked about how the political landscape has affected the way participants present their identity at work, Rain Carter, who self-identifies as a Black AF heterosexual woman, said, "It hasn't changed me. In fact, I decided to really up my cultural awareness and really display it because I'm not afraid. I think that it's caused me to really be blackety, black, black, black. I might start wearing head wraps. I'm gonna wear my Africa earrings. I really wanna kind of amp it up." Dion Davenport, a heterosexual member of a Divine Nine sorority, shared her experiences as coworkers began to notice the association between her attire and the political season. "I didn't state any stance because I don't talk politics at work, but I think it was known. I noticed that when the results came back out, when I went to work on November 6th, I noticed a little snickering behind the back. I'm like, okay, I'm here. You don't have to snicker. I did notice that, but I still continue to, as always, wear, if it's college week, sorority week, I will wear my colors still to represent my experiences with my sorority. It is my hope that this study can lend itself to public school systems and leaders and policymakers fostering more inclusive and school environments for marginalized communities, in particular, Black queer teachers. Until we witness the dismantling of systems in place that hinder our Black queer and Black heterosexual teachers, I would like to highlight the final theme from one of my research participants, Amina Weaver, on comfort as resistance by finding joy in practice. I've never been a very risk-averse person. I've always been willing to take the risk and to hope and pray and generally be rewarded with joy at the end. So even despite all the things that were going on, I would tell my kids and I would tell other teachers if they asked, this is who I am and I can't be someone I'm not. And if the law has a problem with it, then I have to take that up with the legal system. But for now, I gotta be who I am. We came from a really long history. And when I say we, I'm talking Black and brown folk, women, queer folk, just in general. A really long history of not being able to be our full selves. We come from hidden parties in the 1920s. We come from not being allowed to be married to one another. We come from slavery. We come from the Underground Railroad. We come from so much history of not being allowed to be who we are, to be criminalized for being who we are. And I'm just sort of sick of it. And I've said, no more, right? I cannot live in a world. It doesn't feel good to live in a world where I'm criminalized for being who I am. So I'm gonna choose joy. And choosing joy for me looks like living authentically, no matter what. Living authentically in my personal life, in my professional life, living authentically with my therapist, with my parents, with whomever. And anyone who may have a problem with it, they have to still be confronted with it. They have to be made uncomfortable. I'm not going to live uncomfortably. Thank you.
All right, everybody, good afternoon. My name is Alanah Cooper. I'm a master's student within the anthropology department, and my project is called We Will Tend to It, the reconstruction of the Waimama, Florida, Bethune area through archival research and oral histories. I know what you're thinking. One, girl, that title is long. But also, where is Waimama? So Waimama is located, yes, yes, right about in that area. um, Thank you. So Waimama is located in Hillsborough County, near the Manatee County line, and it's about a 40 to 45-minute drive from here to Waimama. Yes, yes, yes. Within Waimama is the Bethune area. The boundary of the Bethune area is Bassett Street to the north, Edina Street to the east, along the railroad tracks, State Road 674 to the south, and Scarborough Street to the west. It's important to note that the majority of the residents do not refer to this area as the Bethune area. For this, from conversations with community members, this area was referred to mostly as Waimama, the Bethune Park area, or the quarters. But for this project, I will refer to the area as the Bethune area to emphasize the Black historical, social, and political components that of this area that are not reflected in the broader scope and history of Waimama. So for the project background, I am a graduate assistant for the Black Cemetery Network, and I am tasked to reach out to different organizations and activists to collaborate on a site brief for the website. But you know, working with a superstar like Dr. Jackson, you know, people always reach out to me. And Reverend Shells was one of those people. She reached out to me to talk about the Waimama Heritage Cemetery. Reverend Shells was the deacon of First Prospect Baptist Church, and she was the organizer of the cemetery at the time. But due to her health, she had to step down. It wasn't until 2003 when Jackie Brown, a local resident of Waimama, reached out to the Black Cemetery Network to inform that she wanted us to change the contact on the website for the Waimama Heritage Cemetery. After engaging a conversation with her about my research pursuits in Waimama and the Bethune area, she offered to give me and Dr. Jackson a tour of Waimama. Taking up on this offer, Dr. Jackson and I were able to get a different perspective of Waimama, the cemetery, and the Bethune area in general. I took this opportunity to listen and learn about the neighborhood and the community from Jackie's perspective. During the tour, Jackie explained the various ways, different places and spaces in the area that shape the community, such as the Bethune Park, Mount Moriah Baptist Church, Aunt Toot's Place, Uncle Doug's Place, and the Waimama Heritage Cemetery. In this robust tour with Jackie, it really helps out a foundational context for approaching my fieldwork for my thesis project. So, just a quick brief history of Waimama. The dominant historical narrative of Waimama starts with Captain Davis and M.D. Dow, his son-in-law. In 1902, Davis and his son-in-law came to Florida to construct the Seaboard Air Line Railroad. There were tasked to extend the railroad line to connect Turkey Creek to Bradenton. The region between Turkey Creek and Bradenton is where Captain Davis decided to build a town. He wanted to name the town after his three daughters, so he took the first three letters of their names, William, Maud, and Mary, his three daughters right there, to form the word Waimama. Waimama was settled near around Tiger Lake and with the railroad tracks at the western boundary of the community. Due to the proximity to the train and railroad, industries such as sawmills, turpentine, truck farming, and packing plants started to come into the area, which brought people into the area for jobs. During this area of prosperity, Captain Davis completed multiple projects to foster his vision of Waimama. Within a 10-year span, he completed a wagon bridge, opened a post office, started a manatee supply company, opened up the Manatee Banking Company, and formed a town council. My man was working. By 1911, Waimama had established schools, churches, and general stores for the growing community. So my research questions and goals. This research project doesn't seek to reconstruct the Bethune area in hopes of providing a corrective story, nor find or discover lost geographies, but to contend with a dominating narrative and redevelopment projects that act to erase the tangible and intangible legacies of this community, capturing the spaces that are unseeable and seeable, allows for the uncovering of silences produced by geographic domination. By reconstructing the past, my plan is to create a way to show the importance of these spaces and to understand the community's vigorous efforts to claim and preserve certain spaces in the present. Lastly, this project plans to capture the community's wants, desires, and plans for these heritage spaces in the future. But relying on the oral histories of the community, my thesis will be able to reconstruct a different narrative of the Bethune area that centers the histories, memories, and mundane experience of the community. So my research questions are, how has the landscape of Wama changed over time? How has the community remembered different spaces of import? What is the relationship between community-centered preservation efforts and crafting public memory and narratives about place? And how are memories of places maintained, kept, and passed on in Waimama? Some of my frameworks. The first one is Black geographies. By using Black geographies as an entry point to discuss the Bethune area, I'll engage with a narrative that locates and draws on Black histories and Black subjects in order to make visible social lives which are often displaced and rendered ungeographic. Black geography's central themes are to intervene in the ways essentialism and Black subjects as being elsewhere, demonstrate how modernity and citizenship are normalized through geographic exclusion, and situates the community's knowledge and contribution to geography as significant political acts and expressions. Black geography allows for the centering of Black life and Black thought within research and emphasizes that Black communities are producers of place and space rather than products of it. I'll be using Dr. Jackson's theoretical framework of active exclusion from her book Heritage, Tourism, and Race, The Other Side of Leisure. Active exclusion is a active exclusion conceptualizes and interprets African American travel, leisure, tourism, and recreational experience, historically emphasizing the deliberate nature of the practice of racial isolation and disenfranchisement. According to Jackson, the construction of space and control of space is done through multiple domains of power, which he refers to as apparatuses, that tactically produce racial separation and protect white spaces. The four apparatuses defined in her book are social control, architectural, legal, and geography. This project will focus on geography as an apparatus for active exclusion. And then lastly, heritage. There are multiple lenses and definitions that we can be applied to understanding heritage, and particularly the relationship to placemaking, history, tourism, identity, stewardship, and memories. For example, First Prospect Baptist Church are working to make the Waimama Memorial Cemetery official heritage, which just means a site that is recognized by some form of legislation, which is defined by Rodney Harrison. Having the status of official heritage deemed by the county or state allows for a heritage site to have some protections from redevelopment plans and access to grants for future projects. It's important for the Waimama Memorial Cemetery to become official heritage because developers are claiming space in this area at a rapid pace. And the community wants to ensure that the cemetery is protected from developmental plans that could build over the cemetery. Now, while official heritage is an operational definition, which just describes how a site is managed, it reduces the social and cultural and historical realities of heritage that connects communities and generations. According to Lauren J. Smith, heritage is defined as a cultural process that engages with acts of remembering that works to create ways to understand and engage with the present. And the sites themselves are cultural tools that can facilitate this process. Smith argues that by looking at heritage from a operational lens or positive lens, researchers will overlook the nuances and values of connectivity, knowledge sharing, and rituals in a heritage site. So my methods. For my methods, I use semi-structural interviews to collect the oral histories. I conducted participant observations at a few heritage events in the area, and I used archival research. So to give you some insight into some of the spaces that I'm working with or writing about, the first one is the cemetery. As you can see, First Prospect is down right at the bottom, and the cemetery is right next to it. First Prospect is the caretaker for the cemetery. So segregation affected cemeteries and burial practice across America. For Waimama, the Fellowship Primitive Baptist Church Cemetery was a cemetery designated for only white residents in Waimama. in the historic Waimama Memorial Cemetery was is where the Bethune area, the Black community, buried their loved ones. It is unsure when or if this cemetery started as a formal cemetery, or if it started as a pottery field. From conversations with some of the community members, some people say that the cemetery was first used as a pottery field for John Does, railroad workers, or people who couldn't afford a proper burial anywhere else. Due to church fires over time and inadequate record keeping, the First Prospect Baptist Church lost majority of their records of the burials in the cemetery. Throughout the years, community members in different organizations would continue to care for the cemetery. Laverne remembers doing cemetery cleanups in the cemetery in his youth. He stated, "We had a community cleanup every so often. We will get everybody to volunteer to go there and do a community cleanup for our cemetery. We didn't want it to look like nothing. We wanted to make it look up to date. We didn't want it to go unnoticed that we had loved ones at placed out there in that cemetery." As you can see, there are some unmarked graves in the cemetery. Most of them are around the bush line to your right, and behind into the next property behind the church. And the community is working to get this spot deemed historical with a historical marker. The next spaces that I'll be looking at are the convenience stores in the area. And as you can see, both of these locations are no longer there on the landscape now. As you can see, Untouched Place is an empty lot, and where Uncle Doug's place was is somebody's property where they had their home. Establishments like Uncle Doug's Place and Untouched Place had multiple functions for the community. It's unclear when these establishments started, but from the interviews I collected, these spaces were meaningful to the community. In Waimama, there wasn't many places for Black youth and teens to hang out or commune. For the Bethune area, Uncle Doug's Place and Untouched Place are examples of establishment that allowed a safe space for children and adults to have fun and leisure after long days of working. Also, these convenience stores provide an alternative place for community members to buy small items. From different convenience stores with the community members, Uncle Doug's was established before Untouched Place. Uncle Doug's Place would display movies for the children in the community. He would display the movies behind his shop. It was said that he will get a white sheet and an old projector to display the movies. And most of the community members remember this so fondly. Uncle Doug's Place was for everyone to go listen to music and dance. Retha Brown, one of the oldest community members in Waimama, called it a little dance hall. Retha got so excited when she started to remember the long nights of dancing at Aunt Doug's Place with her husband. She stated that at Uncle Doug's Place, he had a little box. You put little change in, sold pickles and candies and stuff like that, and we'll dance all night. Lord, at Uncle Doug's Place, I mean, we'll get all dressed up and dance and dance and dance and never get tired. Like Uncle Doug's Place, Tuss Place was more than just a convenience store. This space was also a place for teenagers to hang out, have a good time, and also share and exchange information. All right. For me, I have always defined Black joy as Black people unabashedly expressing themselves with and through cultural products and within Black spaces. Through heritage events, the Bethune community has crafted spaces of Black joy for the community to remember the past. Heritage events allow the community to physically take up space, make their presence known, making a tradition of actively remember the past and making new ones, and fostering a tradition of care of the community and the landscape itself. One event that I will speak on is the cemetery cleanup. The cemetery cleanup allowed for the descendant community to be storytellers regarding of the history of the cemetery and the people buried in the cemetery. Members of the descendant community would tell brief stories of a person buried in the cemetery, telling stories that the storytelling came about naturally and casually. They will point out the location of different family members and explain their family ties and connections to anyone who was listening. Collective remembering brings the past into the present. Casually walking around the cemetery, I will hear stories about people going to church as young children at First Prospect, and the ushers tapping their legs for having short skirts, telling fond memories about their relationships with their mothers, fathers, grandparents. telling stories about them playing in the streets of Waimama in the past and getting baptized and being nervous of not coming back up. And people also expressing feelings of grief as they pass their loved ones. Allowing everyone to listen to these stories as we cleaned, planted, fostered connections among the community and provided a space of vulnerability. And to me, this is Black joy in practice. Here are my references, and thank you guys for listening.